What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about how to go from the worst quarterback on your team to the best quarterback on your team. We're going to talk about everything QB related. Talk about your footwork in the pocket, throwing mechanics, arm strength, accuracy, the work. So I hope this is able to help you out. Let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is your footwork in the pocket when you're going from read to read or progression to progression. So a lot of quarterback coaches teach two methods that I think are very, very bad, and you see a lot of quarterbacks who are maybe not as skilled do these methods, is that when they get back into the pocket, they teach them to bounce up and down like this, or they teach them to pound grapes, like, you know, like you're smashing grapes to make like wine, if you will, and they teach them to do this with their feet. Guys, you do not want to do that. Now, the reason why you don't want to do that, and I recommend to all of you, if you maybe don't trust what I'm saying, go watch any NFL quarterback. None of them do pointless movement. In the NFL, like that, because that's the bar, right? The bar in the NFL, those are the best tier guys, top 32. Even if you're not a good NFL player, if you will, you're still the 32nd best in the entire world at what you do and at your position. And most QBs in the pocket, because there's a very small margin for error, are very quiet with their feet. They have no wasted movement, because if you waste any movement, that throwing window in the NFL goes from this to covered, right? And especially at the college level, and then even at the high school level, the windows get smaller every single time you level up in this game, right? So you can't have wasted motion as a quarterback. If you're bouncing up and down, number one thing that's doing is your vision is going like this. And especially when you're wearing a helmet, your vision's already compromised. It's not the best thing for you. And then when you're doing this with your feet, that's just wasting energy, you guys. You want that energy to go into your throw, especially if you got to drive the ball 20 to 25 yards down the field. Pay attention to guys like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, some of the best dudes in the pocket right now, right? What are they doing? They're very controlled with their feet. Are their feet flat? No, but there are some clips of Josh Allen being completely flat. But when they get into the pocket, they're very controlled, right? They're loaded in their base. They have weight on their back leg. Their whole back foot is grounded, and they're very relaxed, calm, and can just get the ball out of their hands. They have no wasted movement. As a QB, if you want to get to that elite tier, you got to get rid of wasted movement. That has to do with your throwing mechanics, that has to do with the way you process information, and it has to also do with your feet. So make sure, guys, if you are trying to level up as a quarterback, be under control with your feet. Be light on your front foot, so if you need to get out of there, you can. Be heavy on your back foot, so you're in a position ready to drive and ready to throw at all times. Now, fellas, before we get into some things for arm strength, accuracy as a quarterback, if you're a QB and you would like a 2-month-long training schedule that you can follow, go to that very first link in the description below where you can get our elite quarterback training package. Our elite quarterback training package is 2 months of workouts in the gym and on the field for quarterbacks. So we break down everything you should be doing specifically for QBs in the gym and obviously on the field to work on your arm strength, your accuracy, and obviously your footwork. So we map everything out in a schedule, so it's very easy to follow: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we give you the exact sets and reps to do and a video example of each exercise and drill. So guys, if you would like a 2-month-long workout schedule you can do this off season, go to that very first link in the description below. That's where you can get access, and we'd love to get you on that. Now, as a quarterback, fellas, something that can affect your accuracy, believe it or not, it's not just about your wrist flick and where you're extending when you release the ball. It has to do with your base. And so many quarterbacks who are not that talented tend to have a very, very wide base, which affects their accuracy. So a lot of older school quarterback coaches used to teach, hey, you want your feet to be outside of your shoulders, and the reason why you want a base like this is so your front foot can get down fast. But here's the issue with that. Yes, your front foot's going to get down fast, and that might speed up your release a little bit, but as quarterbacks, an essential element to accuracy and an essential element to arm strength is your hips. As a QB, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to step to your target, and you want your hips to be able to rotate, and you want your back hip to be coming through before your elbow and before the ball. That creates a whipping effect, which helps us with torque, but how it helps with accuracy is you don't need to compensate by dipping your shoulder down or ripping your shoulder way open. Quarterbacks, we are rotational athletes. We're going to rotate one way or the other. It's like a baseball player, right? So think of it like this. You're a baseball player in the batter's box, but you're really wide, right? And so to be able to hit a baseball, what do you have to do with your back foot? You got to pivot, right? But if your feet are super wide like this, you're not going to be able to get most of your hips into it, so you're going to be doing more so arms, and your arms are going to be rotating. Same thing as a QB, but that affects accuracy. Think about it like this. If you're a quarterback, and let's say you're really wide, and you step, your hips aren't going to be able to rotate. So to just get the ball there, your body's going to compensate for that. So what it'll do is your elbow will start to pull down, and you'll lean, and that pushes your release really high. Or what you'll do is you'll take this shoulder and rip it open, which makes your release really wide. So you start missing left to right. When you're high, you miss high and low. When you're wide, you miss left to right. And that's purely based on not being able to rotate with your hips. Because if your hips can rotate, your upper body can stay still. And we want my upper body to be as still as possible because that's what helps with accuracy. A lot of young quarterbacks love to lean, and that lean is usually a direct relation with their base. So you don't want this wide base, you actually want a narrow base. You want to have your feet inside of your armpits. You want your shins to be completely straight in your base. And you want to be nice and light on your front foot. Now, it's a little bit harder to take a quick stride when you do this. If you're going from wide to narrow, chances are at first you're going to want to step big. We obviously don't want to do that because that slows your release time down and puts you right back to the spot we're trying to avoid. You want to be here and you want to think step down. But now since your feet are under you, you could rotate. And so when you could rotate, you don't need to lean. You don't need to swing open. You could just stay nice and level with your head, level with your shoulders, and just snap and extend to the target, and you'll be a much more accurate passer. So guys, to affect accuracy, close that base down, get it under your armpits so we can actually rotate. Now, fellas, let's talk about our release time as a quarterback. So let's give you a scenario. Let's say you're a freshman in high school, right? And you're going into your sophomore year, and maybe you played freshman ball, maybe you had some success, but now you're transitioning to varsity ball, right? Or even JV football. And you want to start, and you want to start on varsity as soon as possible, and that's most quarterbacks, right? And everybody always asks, what's the biggest difference? The biggest difference is obviously the size of the players, number one, but also the speed of the game. Now, let's say you're a high school quarterback wanting to transition to college. What's the biggest difference? The speed of the game. Your throwing windows go from this to this to this to this every single time that you level up as a player, like we talked about earlier in this video. Now, a lot of times quarterbacks are not preloaded in their base, so their release time is actually longer. They have wasted motion. Remember, we don't want any wasted motion. So a lot of times what QBs do is, like, let's say, okay, you're in the pocket. Maybe you're working a passing concept where, like, let's say your slot receiver is running like a whip route, right? And your outside receiver is running a 12-yard in. So what we're trying to do is pull the outside backer to the whip, so there's a window right there for that dig. But you also have a middle linebacker in the middle of the field who's reading your eyes. Let's say it's a 4-3 defensive front. So you got a very specific window. In college, it's a fast window. Pros, it's crazy fast. High school, it's not as fast, but it's faster if you go from freshman to varsity. It's the same passing concepts, it's the same throws, but things are quicker. So a lot of times guys will be here looking at the whip, they want to throw the dig, and what do? They load up and then they throw, and they dip into their back leg. We cannot do that. That is wasted motion, you guys. So what we want to do is we want to be already loaded. A great base that I like to be is upright, but I would say about 70% of your weight on your back leg. You should be shifted back, and you should have a straight shin with your back leg. So I'm here first read, second read, I could just throw. I don't need to be tall and then dip down, or I don't want to be forward and then have to hitch up. So you got to make sure, guys, when you're going from read to read, this is what you should be working on in 7-on-7 and practice. Whenever you're working reads, you want to be ready to go so you can get that ball out of your hands. Most of the time, your release time is predicated on the lower half, not necessarily your arm. How fast can your front foot get down, and can your base already be preloaded? Now, let's talk about something I see a lot of non-advanced quarterbacks do, and that is lift the ball directly to 90 degrees when their front foot gets down in their motion. Now, some of you may have been taught this by a coach, but guys, the quarterback position is consistently evolving. The old days of hold the ball up on the shelf, reach up, and then come straight over the top so you skip the step of going to this opposite L angle, those days are long behind us. And I get it, a lot of people who maybe played at a high level teach that type of stuff, and there's no denying their playing career, but coaches, as a coach, it's your job to evolve with the game. That's your job as a coach, in my opinion. I think it doesn't matter what you did back in the day, doesn't matter what worked back in the day, because the position evolves. And when you compare the teaching that you might be getting from a quarterback coach or your school quarterback coach to what NFL guys are doing, and NFL guys are doing things differently, those are the best guys. Those are the guys that you want to try to model your game after. You should never copy anybody verbatim, but what do they all have in common that makes them elite? That's what you want to look for, right? And so a lot of times, dudes, what they'll do is they'll lift the ball to 90, and what ends up happening is when their hips start to rotate in their throw, that ball dips behind their head. And so when you're wearing shoulder pads, a helmet, a little inconsistent like that. And when you're way high like this, you have a tendency to miss high. Where we want to be, you guys, is that when you take a step to the target, you want to be somewhere, I call it a backstroke. Some guys teach a perfect L. I'm not one of those guys. Some guys are a little higher than that. That's fine. Some guys are a little lower than that. Some guys maybe have the nose tilted down. But what happens is that when your hips rotate, that keeps that ball away from your head. That's less pressure on your shoulder, because when you're like this, that's a lot of pressure on your shoulder, and the motion is quicker. You get to a position called extension faster. So accuracy as a QB, like we talked about, has a lot to do with our base. Icing on the cake is a concept called called extension. Extension is when you flick your wrist, elbow, shoulder. Should be extended where you want the ball to go, your head still, your shoulders still, and you can really snap. That's how reason why some quarterbacks get more rotations on the ball than others, because they get to extension quicker. So when you do this 90 over the head, it's hard to extend right away. But when you go opposite L, if you will, let's just use that for the sake of the example, doesn't need to be a perfect L, and when you rotate, you can extend here. You don't need to extend over the top. That's why so many coaches teach that like sidearm method. I'm not against throwing sidearm. I used to be kind of more so, hey, you want to be a little bit higher, you don't want to necessarily be here, but coaches, their argument for the sidearm is that when you're here and you just go straight sidearm, you get to extension faster, right? So I'm not saying throw like that, but what I am saying is that I see their argument. I just want you guys to be at an opposite L when your front foot gets down so your hips rotate and you can extend quicker. That will increase the rotations on the ball and make you a more accurate passer. And that's the biggest difference. You could have the strongest arm in the world, but if you can't put the ball on the money, it does not matter. Sometimes these older school habits that coaches will teach do not actually help and will not actually make you a more efficient QB.